want to focus. Obviously, look, I'm a campaign guy, I'm a politics guy, and it's an even numbered year. So, when in doubt, I'm going to focus on where we are politically at the moment. And there is, look, I made it clear that it looks like the House is already gone. The question is it going to be a small majority for the Democrats or a large majority for the Democrats? Structurally, it's hard to see how it becomes a large majority for the Democrats. In fact, some of the feedback I got on my Substack, I took what I gave to you guys on Monday, and I basically put some charts together as well. And it's in the Substack um, on how, essentially saying the cake is basically baked. You've got, we've already crossed the 50 plus open seat list. There's already 30 Republican retirements. There are more that are likely to come. You've got presidential job ratings sitting in the very low 40s. There's even a handful of polls that shows his approval rating in the high 30s and disapproval rating creeping over 60. That is a recipe for a midterm flip. The question is, are there enough congressional districts that Democrats can make competitive to take instead of winning 10 to 15 seats, can they win 20 to 30 seats? I had a few, one of the pollster that I trust quite a bit, who really is more of an independent these days, but certainly is more familiar with the Republican side of the aisle. He shared with me some numbers and reminding me that in 2018, I believe, not a single congressional district that Donald Trump got 57% or more in, Democrats were able to flip. That there is a ceiling, right? There is a ceiling. And then even in the 2025 Virginia Assembly races, Democrats were able to win districts that Trump won by 5 points or less. They were not able to win districts where he won by more than 5 points. And we've seen Democrats are trying to put some double-digit Trump districts in play, including one of the Montana seats with Ryan Zinke, one of the Colorado seats in and around Colorado Springs. Look, that's smart strategy, right? You want to try to stretch the field, make the incumbent party spend more money. The Republicans have more money than the Democrats right now. So if you're in the challenger position, you want to make them dilute their resources a little bit. But the Republicans have a huge problem on their hands. They've got a president who is not interested in helping Republicans actually succeed in the midterms, right? The most glaring example is what he's done in the state of Texas or what he's not done in the state of Texas. By staying out of that Texas Senate primary, he is perhaps going to cost his party $500 million to try to rescue one of the most flawed, ethically and morally challenged nominees that they could ever have. Only Roy Moore is worse if they end up with Ken Paxton as a nominee. And it's going to cost them an arm and a leg, no matter who the Democratic nominee is, whether it is Tallarico or it is Crockett, because Paxton himself is not popular. There are plenty of Bush Republicans and Cornyn Republicans who are among those who voted to impeach him in the state house, who are not big fans of him. And because Paxton's been very loyal to Trump, Trump can't bring himself to endorse against Paxton. He views Cornyn as somebody that's not been Trumpy enough. He sees Cornyn, and there's plenty of people that have whispered in Trump's ear that Cornyn's really McConnell in a cowboy hat. And yet, if Trump were doing what was in the best interest of the Republican Party, he'd have endorsed Cornyn months ago. And that primary field might not have been cleared, but he'd be in a lot better place than where they are now. Now, maybe he comes in late and he does endorse. Maybe he is going to wait till the runoff to pick between two, right? Wesley Hunt's flown on Air Force One, right? He's been sucking up to Trump. We know Paxton is, frankly, on issues, has been closer to Trump than anybody else. He was pro-Trump before it was cool among some Texas conservatives. And that matters to Trump. But it was interesting to read the stories about this donor retreat earlier this week among Republicans, and they were getting this presentation about the trouble in Texas. Well, there's one easy way to solve the problem, and Trump won't do it. It's fascinating to see, like, when you look at the Senate map for Republicans, Trump has made it harder for them, right? Trump chased Tom Tillis out of the race, and now they have a harder look. It is maybe Cooper runs against Tillis too, but an incumbent Tillis against Cooper is look. The races are going to be competitive either way, but Tillis would be starting with a greater advantage than Watley, the former RNC chair who Trump has endorsed. So they've made North Carolina tougher thanks to Donald Trump. Texas is a problem thanks to Donald Trump. Um, what's fascinating, and he just actually potentially just screwed his candidate in Michigan, Mike Rogers, because um, out of nowhere, and talk about the under the radar once again, the corrupt lobbying stories of the Trump administration are the stories that go under the radar more than any, right? The story I spent a lot of time with last week about uh, the Abu Dhabi investments into the Trump organization 4 days before the inauguration, which you start to line up. It was filled with quid pro quos that touched the Binance pardon, that seemed to it seemed to change policy on what chips could be sold to the UAE, which now could potentially back channel and sell them to China, right? All of this, that is to me a story that is as bad as any story in the history of presidential politics and graft, right? Worse than Teapot Dome when you put it all together. And as Andy McCarthy, um, the conservative legal analyst at National Review has put it, you got to add a couple of zeros to Biden, and he was very hard on Biden, thought the Bidens were doing was very corrupt. And he said what the Trump family has done, you got to add a couple of zeros to what the Bidens did to get anywhere near the corruption of what the Trump family has done in this specific scenario. Well, Trump did it again. So you may have read about the brand new bridge that would connect Detroit to Windsor, Canada. And Windsor, Canada, is that town just across the river there in Michigan, the border of Canada. Um, when I was younger, I one time did the Windsor Ballet, and I'll just sit here and say, if you know, you know. And I'd love to hear from those of you that may be familiar with the Windsor Ballet. And again, I'm not going any further because I don't know how many people will be upset about that. So I will just leave that on the side. Um, but let's just say Windsor's a lot of fun. Anyway, but it's a huge, it's an important business corridor for Michigan's economy and for Canada's economy. And there's only been one bridge for a long time, and the guy who owns that bridge makes a lot of money being the sort of the most important, transit point between Canada and the United States. Well, Canada wanted another bridge. They wanted to be able to, essentially, the lone bridge was a lot of congestion. It was slowing down movement between the two countries, and so Canada agreed to pay for a new bridge connecting Windsor and Detroit, and it's jointly owned by the state of Michigan and Canada paid for it. The Gordie Howe Bridge. It is seen as a economic boon for a lot of Michigan companies, very important to the state of Michigan's economy and very important to Canada. And the owner of the other bridge, or the guy who basically gets all the fees from the use of that other bridge, lobbies Lutnick at the Commerce Department, tells him about this, and then within a day, Trump's on Truth Social manufacturing some outrage saying he's going to shut down this bridge or he's going to take it over. Um, and all because a billionaire got access, complained about that it was going to cost him money. Perhaps they've written their share of checks to the Trump campaign, so Trump felt like he had to be responsive. Well, it put his Senate candidate, Republican Mike Rogers, in a pretty tough spot because this is just good for the Michigan. This is not one of those things that is a Democratic bridge or a Republican bridge. This is good for Michigan's economy. Hard stop. Mike Rogers is what I'd call a pretty conventional Republican, pro-business Republican. And here he's got his president putting him in an awkward position where he wants to essentially um, use the power of the federal government to make it harder for business to trade with Canada. Can't think of anything more less Republican than that. But this is the larger issue that Trump's introduced for a lot of Republicans running for office in his entire sort of protectionist agenda at times with tariffs and things like this. And I'm going to get to that in a moment with that House vote. Having good life insurance is incredibly important. I know from personal experience. I was 16 when my father passed away. We didn't have any money. He didn't leave us in the best shape. My mother, single mother now, widow, myself, 16, trying to figure out how am I going to pay for college. And lo and behold, my dad had one life insurance policy that we found. It wasn't a lot, but it was important at the time. And it's why I was able to go to college. Little did he know how important that would be in that moment. Well, guess what? That's why I am here to tell you about Ethos Life. They can provide you with peace of mind knowing your family is protected, even if the worst comes to pass. Ethos is an online platform that makes getting life insurance fast and easy, all designed to protect your family's future in minutes, not months. There's no complicated process, and it's 100% online. There's no medical exam required. You just answer a few health questions online. You can get a quote in as little as 10 minutes, and you can get same-day coverage without ever leaving your home. You can get up to $3 million in coverage, and some policies start as low as $2 a day. That would be billed monthly. As of March 2025, Business Insider named Ethos the #1 no medical exam instant life insurance provider. So protect your family with life insurance from Ethos. Get your free quote at ethos.com/Chuck. So again, that's ethos.com/Chuck. Application times may vary, and the rates themselves may vary as well. But trust me, life insurance is something you should really think about, especially if you've got a growing family. But the point is that Donald Trump keeps making decisions, making proclamations that actually do tactical harm to the Republican chances of holding the Senate and holding the House. He's undermining Mike Rogers' campaign in Michigan with this Gordie Howe bridge business. He has made it harder for his party. It's going to cost him literally $500 million if Cornyn's not the nominee in Texas. And like I said, it's all because people have whispered in Trump's ear that Cornyn is McConnell with a cowboy hat. And then there's the tariff mess, where he's divided his own party. And of course, Mike Johnson has no control over it. Like, he is a speaker in name only. But and the reason I call him a spino, a speaker in name only, is because he can't even control the floor of the House of Representatives. Normally, control of the House of Representatives is absolute, right? You can have a one-seat majority, but if you're the organizing party, because the speaker has his own committee, can decide what gets to the floor and what doesn't. It's called the Rules Committee. But of course, the Rules Committee is how the cranky conservatives that hated Kevin McCarthy and essentially created that drama having to do with who the hell was going to be speaker the last time Republicans, back at the start of 23. The price of Mike Johnson becoming speaker was to give essentially these cranky conservatives, they're kind of the old Freedom Caucus guys, seats on the Rules Committee. And it is astonishing how often that a handful of Republicans vote with the Democrats and essentially screw the speaker and leadership on their ability to control the floor. So they couldn't stop this procedural vote on tariffs. So what happened? Now you've got more Republicans. When the vote comes on the floor to repeal tariffs on Canada, more Republicans have joined Democrats to repeal those tariffs. All over the Midwest, these tariffs are enormously unpopular. I mean, it has made the farm economy in Iowa crater, right? I shared with you a couple of weeks ago how their GDP has dropped to 50th in the State of the Union, out of 50 states, their statewide GDP. And it's all due to these tariffs and what it's done to the farm economy, and soybeans essentially sitting there, not being bought by the Chinese. In Michigan, none of these the tariffs that they've put on these auto parts. And then you've got Trump deciding he may pull out of his version of NAFTA that he calls the USMCA, just completely pull out. Now, As I remind people all the time with Trump, follow what he does more than you should follow what he does, not always what he says. He says a lot of stuff. He talked about pulling out of the USMCA before, and he ended up signing a new deal. Um, but that would be yet another gift to Democrats in an election year if he totally upends both the Texas and Michigan economies and other economies by blowing up the USMCA. It's a fair question to ask yourself, does Donald Trump care about the future of the Republican Party? I have contended here he does not. If there is no Republican president elected after him, and while he's alive, he will see that as a victory, not as a disappointment. If he can make it clear that the only person that can win as a Republican is Donald Trump, he'd rather have that than to see the party grow. There is a selfishness to him. He's got this huge financial war chest that he's put together, all these different slush funds. Is he actually going to, how much of it is he going to be willing to spend in the midterms? Is he going to spend it to help elect Republicans? Or is he going to spend it in order to focus on his grievances? Right? I mean, look at all the money he's wasting against Thomas Massie in order to deal with the grievance. Or look what he's done in Louisiana. Now, that's a safer way. If he wanted to punish Cassidy, I politically understand why he does. But he's lucky that at John Bell Edwards, the last Democrat to win statewide in Louisiana, decided not to run for Senate. Now, I think it'd be a big uphill battle, but that could have thrown that race into a tizzy. It is already hard enough for elected Republicans, and then the icing on the cake this week, if you're an elected Republican incumbent member of Congress, House or Senate, and you're trying to make the case to voters, reelect that because we've got this great agenda. Donald Trump said, no, 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 no. I want no legislation passed this year. He said no to doing another reconciliation bill, which is an opportunity to use your congressional majorities to get more of your agenda through. He says, and I got everything I wanted from the one big beautiful bill. Well, that's good for Donald Trump. That's a terrible message if you're an incumbent member of Congress. Yeah, okay, you did that. What else are you going to do? How come you didn't do anything this year? What are these tariffs doing? He is making it strategically. Just take your politics out of it a second. Strategically, Republicans have an opportunity to put together, a party line bill of some sort. Maybe they could put some stuff in there that creates difficult votes for Democrats. But they don't know how to do politics 101 sometimes. And you have amateur hour speaker, which is why you see like it is, if you gave John Thune truth serum and ask him what kind of partner Mike Johnson is, I think he would say Mike Johnson's a nice guy who's way in over his head. And Donald Trump doesn't care. And the message he's sending by no reconciliation bill, when he said no to doing another bill, which a bunch of Republicans wanted to do, is I really don't care about you. I don't care if you have nothing to run on. You should just keep running on the one big beautiful bill. Okay. Look, he got a good jobs report this week. By the way, somebody ought to investigate. There's been it's really bizarre, and this is a little bit of an aside, but Peter Navarro went on TV 2 days ago and said, hey, this jobs report, don't be prepared. This may not be the best first jobs report. We've had a lot of deportations. There's some haywire. And then somebody made a lot of money on Kalshi making a prediction that the jobs report was going to be a good jobs report. I'm going to ask the question, are there administration officials that are saying certain things in public to move the prediction markets one way so they can cash in on them, or their friends can cash in on them another way? I'm just saying, first of all, this needs to be looked at. I mean, literally, Peter Navarro went on TV downplaying that this wasn't going to be a good jobs report. And it did affect the Cauchy numbers. If you go back and look at it, go look at the line. And then all of a sudden, the number to go over the forecasted number to make your bet, somebody made some money either hedging Peter Navarro's prediction or they knew damn well what was going on. And this is why, folks, these prediction markets, when somebody knows the answer, are extraordinarily corruptible. They're going to be corruptible, whether it's as silly as, how long will the Caroline Leavitt press briefing be? The fact that you're allowed to bet on that seems like something that shouldn't be allowed, or excuse me, predict. When you see something like this with the jobs report, where literally Peter Navarro went on Fox Business to downplay it, certainly sounded as if he already knew. In fact, some of us, you saw what he said and you're like, oh, I guess they're trying to get ahead of what they think is going to be a bad jobs report. Oh, by the way, why is it leaking out? Now, why do this many people know about it? It's supposed to be embargoed. It's supposed to be you're not supposed to be able to move markets like this. But then it turns out to be the exact opposite. I'm just asking questions. Let's just say a lot of other people need to be asking questions on this one. But it was a good jobs number. It was a good jobs report. That's it. Maybe if it's sustainable and maybe Republicans can run on more money in people's pockets if it indeed actually stay in their pockets. I think the concern I would have as an incumbent Republican is that when these tax rebates come and their tax refunds are there, that people are frustrated that this incredible new refund all had to go to paying for health care, higher electric bills, and higher food costs. And the refund disappears even faster than the refund they got a year ago. And how's that going to make them feel by June or July? Are they going to love this economy then? The point is, what Trump has done to congressional Republicans is he's basically said, it's either that or the party's doomed. Either the big tax rebates that come to people excite the electorate so much that it secures that makes people feel better, and that somehow this antagonism against Trump starts to dissipate. Call me skeptical, but the bottom line is the biggest impediment right now for congressional Republicans to keep their majorities is their own president. He is standing in the way. And if Democrats win the Senate, they might only have Donald Trump to thank, considering how he's made the map harder for his own party. It's quite the feat. But again, Donald Trump well. He cares more about Trump than he does the Republican Party. And it's something all Republicans need to be thinking about. Because many of these folks are going to get elected and in theory be in office long after Donald Trump's running the party. So the point is, you see more Republicans willing to vote against him in Congress, more Republicans willing to come out against him, and there's a reason. He's making their life harder. He's making their life a lot harder. This episode of the ToddCast is brought to you by American Financing. Let's be honest. The math just isn't adding up lately. Between the grocery store and those skyrocketing insurance premiums, even with a steady job, more families are being forced to rely on high-interest credit cards to cover expenses. So if you're a homeowner caught in this cycle, carrying balances with interest rates in the 20s, frankly, even the 30s, it's time to get some relief. Right now, mortgage rates are at a 3-year low. And my friends at American Financing are helping homeowners pay off that high-interest debt at rates in the low 5s. Their salary-based mortgage consultants don't just push loans on you. They build exit strategies from debt. On average, they're saving their customers $800 a month. So, if you start today, you may even delay the next 2 mortgage payments. There are no upfront fees or obligations. To find out how much you can save, America's home for home loans is American Financing. 866-885-1081. That's 866-885-1081 or americanfinancing.net/the Chuck Toddcast. Important disclaimer, NMLS 182334, NMLS consumeraccess.org. APR for rates in the 5 start at 6.196% for well-qualified buyers. Call 866-885-1081 for details about credit costs and terms or americanfinancing.net/the Chuck Toddcast.